Hello and welcome to the 39 Minutes of Heaven we call the D1Baseball Podcast. I am your host, Michael Patrick Rooney. Tonight's episode brought to us by our good friends at S2 Cognition. S2 Cognition delivers a revolutionary approach to helping athletes understand how in-game decisions impact their performance from youth levels all the way to the pros. I want to also say thanks to our good friends at Pitch Logic, the system used by players, coaches, scouts, and instructors at all levels of play, from youth leagues to the big leagues. Easy to use and affordable technology makes the platform accessible to every player at every level. All the metrics and features used at the highest level of our sport. See pitchlogic.com for more information. Happy Thursday evening. Week 8 is imminent, and we're getting quadratic. We've got a quad box of goodness here tonight. The great Fitty Barrels, owner-operator of the JoJo Joes, Joseph J. Healy, the czar of college baseball, Kendall J. Rogers. Gentlemen, good evening. Salutations. How we doing?
Good evening.
Hi, Runes. Happy to see. Good to have us all back. I feel like it's been a while since it's been the four of us on one of these preview shows.
Don't cross the streams tonight. Fitzy, you still at the beach?
Yeah, fired up for quad box, Runes. Quad box.
Let's get quadratic, people. Let's go.
Can't you see the sand, Runes? You can tell he's at the beach.
Yeah.
You see it behind him there? It's
the vibe, Joe. I'm just feeling Fitzy's beach vibe is what it is. So I missed the
He's
beach.
not all tan though. I expected a tan.
It's probably too cold.
It's been a little. I mean, it's the off season still.
He's got a Miami Vice just out of frame. You know, that the old Miami Vice, like a strawberry daiquiri mixed with a what is it mixed with?
Couldn't tell you, Joe.
You guys are leaving me hanging out to dry here. Okay.
You lost me at strawberry daiquiri.
Hold on.
If you need any information on Coors Light, I could help, but strawberry daiquiri really not my
Joe, Sam
jam.
Houston would be very disappointed that you're invoking a strawberry daiquiri on this conversation.
It's a strawberry daiquiri and a pina colada. You mix them together.
Oh.
It's like it's like a stereotypical like beach drink. Like
I thought that was the official drink of Cut and Shoot.
Yes, I'm sure the Miami Vice is very popular in Cut and Shoot, Texas.
Yeah, Cut and Shoot.
That's the house. That's the house drink at what was the? I'm drawing a blank on the name of the bowling alley.
Something Time to spare.
It's the house drink at Time to Spare.
Yeah, their margaritas are served with shards of glass. You don't even get ice. Toughen you up.
Runes,
boys,
Runes does not mean that, by the way. We don't need to get end up in some sort of litigation. Runes doesn't mean that.
Instead of Goldschlager, it's shards of glass.
That's right. It's a good point, Joe. That's an actual institution or like a business that I'm besmirching.
It's a real business. I'm sure they're alcoholic drinks are lovely.
Internal bleeding, guys.
Yeah. Well, I don't know who said that shards of glass in a drink is deformation. I mean, like I thought that was we're trying to promote toughness. That said, speaking of toughness, we're at the halfway point of this season, and I don't know, boys. I just don't know that my pitch count is where it needs to be. I don't know that my stuff is where it needs to be. But the season doesn't care how Coach Rooney feels. The season is going to march on, and I've got my Utah Valley BP top on tonight, so maybe that can win the day. Go Wolverines!
Yeah. It's been a long season so far. I kind of feel like me and Mike Bianco feel very similar tonight.
Yeah, well, you're facing Hagen Smith. That's not going to make you feel warm and fuzzy inside with Will the Thrill McIntyre on the back end. Boys, let's do this. We're going to keep it tight tonight. We're going to do the 10 series that we picked in the weekly picks. Yes, the Rune Dogs are still in first place. I know that we're just assuming that at this point, but yes, Etheridge Farms just climbing their game back, which is disgusting. So what I want to do is I'll give you the series. I want you to tell me who you picked, and I can help if you can't remember. It's fair. And I also would like just give me a player. Give me a player from the series that intrigues you for one reason or another. Joe, let's start with you. We'll go clockwise. First series was Vandy at LSU, and right now it is LSU 10-6 with one out in the ninth. You're muted, Joe. There you go.
Yep, I was working on it. I was finding it. So I went with LSU in this series because I just kind of had a feeling that, LSU might have hit bottom last weekend against Arkansas, which a lot of people are going to hit bottom against Arkansas this season. I have a feeling. So I just kind of had a hunch they might punch back a little bit this weekend. And, my player that I was going to mention is on the mound tonight, and he didn't actually have a good outing, but Luke Holman would have been my player to mention before the series got started, because Vanderbilt's pitching off a little bit. They've saved Cunningham and Holton for the next 2 days. So it felt really important that LSU get this game, because the next 2 days are going to be a lot more difficult for them. They need the Holman game. Now, again, Holman didn't pitch great, but LSU, because of its offense, which is something we haven't said a lot this season, is out in front right now as they go to the ninth. So didn't get the start they wanted, but it does look like they are going to win the Holman game.
Interesting. Fitzy, what say you on this game? I'm going to come back to you, Joe. I may give you a player that I want you to comment on, but Fitzy, go ahead. Who'd you pick in this? And who's a player?
Yeah, I also picked LSU. Coming back home, I actually haven't really even come close to reaching for the panic button on LSU. I know they're 2-7 in the league. It's been a tough schedule these first 3 weeks. They also haven't obviously played great. I mean, they're down toward the bottom of the league, and what is it? Scoring and ERA and all the things you look for, scoring runs and allowing runs, they haven't done great at. However, still like their personnel. I wasn't really that worried, and I felt like coming home this weekend felt like a get right opportunity. And how about my man Griffin Herring coming out of the pen, 3 innings scoreless tonight, kind of really slamming the door there. Is that game over yet, or is it still going?
2 outs in the ninth.
Yeah, I mean he's done a great job with that bullpen. Love him. Just a really good quality lefty that they can extend for multiple innings. Think he's a big key to their season, and he's been good. And so that's what I got for you, LSU.
Kendall, you went LSU too.
I did, and one thing I kind of noticed when I looked at Vanderbilt, which is really interesting, because when I saw them earlier this year at Minute Maid, Alan Espinal, Cam Kozel, I mean, they were hitting with big time power. And Vanderbilt in conference play, guys, going into the weekend, they didn't have a home run again tonight. 4 home runs as a team in SEC play so far. So they're kind of an outlier in this conference. And I think going on the road to Alex Box, if you only have 4 home runs as a team, that's not a great matchup at the box against LSU, an LSU team that really needs a series win. I agree with what Joe said, that obviously tonight was huge with Vanderbilt pitching off. I think the guy for me, as the weekend unfolds, and frankly as the season unfolds for LSU, is Paxton Kling. He had an RBI, he had a double tonight in the 9-hole. He's going to be especially important, because I think coming into the season, he was the guy that we all kind of tabbed as like the kind of the X factor. Like if he took off, the rest of this offense would take off. And with Jake Brown, the talented freshman, he's been banged up all year long. They really need him to step up, and Healy stepped up with a big hit tonight. We'll see how he does the rest of the weekend.
Very good. I picked Vandy, and there was some very interesting Jay Johnson quotes this week, like, quotes about like there's going to be no phones in the locker room and no phone, like, the quotes that say the coach is saying, I don't like my team at all. Like, I don't like my team's headspace at all. And that's like, sometimes that can be fine. Like the coaches and players don't have to be in a love affair to have a great team. Sometimes the team rallies against the coach and it goes just fine. But they just seem a little disheveled. And I was banking on Vandy's pitching, and like the Grayson Carter starting thing, Joe, that's what I wanted to ask you about. Vandy started Grayson Carter tonight. And, in fairness, Luke Holman gave up a bunch of runs tonight too. So I don't want to just pick on Grayson Carter. What I'm picking on is Grayson Carter seems to have found a really good groove in the bullpen. And then he got a start against Missouri, which, no offense, is a lineup that is in no way ready for this kind of party. And so I think a lot of teams could trick themselves into some pitching decisions after they face Missouri. So I here's my question, Joe. Like, Vandy's pitching staff strikes me as so deep. Like, really, Grayson Carter with, like, it's not just that he can or can't do it. It's you're removing a really good bullpen piece, right? I mean, what's your take on that?
Yeah, but I think they got pushed into that decision a little bit because of 2 things. One, Devin Futrell in his last start, it was not good against South Carolina. And his velo was down. He wasn't really locating. And he just got ambushed by South Carolina in that game. It was, I don't know, whatever it was, 7-0 in the first or 6-0, whatever it was. The second thing is that they've been trapped in this cycle. They've had 3 Thursday to Saturday series in the last 4 weeks, which seems like frankly a scheduling oversight by the league to give them that many of those in a small condensed area. And of course, one of those is Easter weekend, which that's going to happen. But so, and we know the way Vanderbilt likes to handle its pitching, and they're being very careful with Carter Holton in particular this season. Once they get kind of in that cycle of Thursday to Saturday, I think we understand they're kind of creatures of habit and are just going to kind of perpetuate that. The last thing is that the best candidate to move into the rotation other than Grayson Carter would have been JD Thompson, who'd pitched well in the midweek, but he's been injured. So I just think all of those things kind of combined to create a scenario where, they had to go with Grayson Carter. And once he pitched well against Mizzou, I think they were just going to kind of keep going down that road until something changed. And this is probably what changed. And next week, I expected it'll be a little bit different, but I don't know that they had a whole lot of choice in this particular instance.
Yeah, very fair. Yeah, it's interesting. Vandy's pitching is very interesting. Like they've got a very low team ERA, and then they've got some guys that walk people, and I mean, yeah, they're 6th in the country in ERA. So, they're very interesting. This series gets interesting. Like LSU built a little momentum because I'm with you, Fitzy. Like their personnel for LSU, it's the same dudes. They just seem disheveled. So interesting. Wake at Virginia Tech is of great interest to me. Joe, who'd you pick, and who do you give us a player, please?
Yeah, so I went Virginia Tech. There's just something about, and one is Wake is kind of the LSU of the ACC in terms of like we've just been a little shell shocked the first few weeks of like what on earth is happening here, right? So it's a pick against Wake, but it's also a pick for Virginia Tech. Now their ACC schedule has not been, frankly, not been very good so far this season. So they should be winning those games. There's also the fact that it's tough to play in Blacksburg. That is a tough place to go into. My player to pick here is Chris Cannizzaro for Virginia Tech. Just a classic case of their staff recruiting just a perfect older transfer who was ready to transition to major conference college baseball, and impressive stuff when you consider, he came from Bucknell originally a few years back, and his numbers at Bucknell were fine, but they weren't, this wasn't Sonny DeShera hitting whatever 400 something at Samford where you're pretty confident that it's going to translate. This was a different deal. And he's turned out to be a really nice player for them. And as they've kind of transitioned this offense, they've had a lot of position players put into pro baseball the last couple of years. He's been a little bit of a glue piece in that lineup as the years have gone by.
Love it. Fitzy, who do you like here? By the way, LSU won that game, but it was 1st and 3rd with 2 outs up 4. So it did get a little dicey at the end.
Yeah, I got Wake Forest on the road in this series, and it's kind of like LSU. I'm just not ready to quit these guys. And also, I think Wake is actually about to make a run. They're 4-8. They haven't been good. I've talked about how I was worried about them, but all of a sudden they've kind of limped their way to the midway point, and they're not dead yet. I know they're 4-8 in the league. They lost their first 4 series, but like all of a sudden you got Cole Rowland back. I guess that's my name. Like that to me is a big difference maker. Like a dude in the bullpen that they hadn't had all year long. He's supposed to really be their guy at the back end. He's back now, and I just think that's huge. But I'm going to break the rules. I'm going to go Kendall style and say also, Nick Kurtz and Merrick Houston are back and both heating up, mind you. Like, and also maybe most important. Well, not most importantly, all those things are important. But like Josh Hartle, I think is about to flip the switch. It's been a very disappointing first half for him, but he was one of the best pitchers in the country last year as a first-team All-American. Talking to our friend and yours, Coach Farron, who did the Wake Forest game this past weekend, he thought Hartle threw pretty well and really looked pretty good. I know it was 4 2/3, 2 runs, 7 strikeouts, whatever it was. It feels like he's right there on the cusp, and I believe in Corey Muscara, their pitching coach. I think Moose is going to get him figured out, and he's going to make a big second half run. I think Wake's run starts now. That's nothing. It's not a vote of no confidence in Virginia Tech because I do think Virginia Tech's good, but it is a vote of confidence in Wake. I think that they've kind of been pushed back into the corner, and now they're going to buck their heads a little bit.
Like it. Kendall, what say you?
I think if you're Wake Forest and outside of Chase Burns, your pitching has been a mess. I'm not sure Virginia Tech's where I want to head. I just think when you look at that Virginia Tech lineup, Aaron and I were just talking about Henry Cook, a couple of days ago for the midseason All-America team. He's having a great year. Carson DiMartini, Eddie Micheletti, is having a really nice year offensively. So, that's just a really good club top to bottom from an offensive standpoint. I just think when you're trying to get your pitching staff right, it's just a really difficult lineup to go against. So I like Virginia Tech.
Fitzy, are you happy about that jailbreak that you just created? Jailbreak of
Yeah.
names.
I am. Me and Kendall just playing the give and go there all the way down the court
Yeah.
is great.
And Kendall, you missed a golden opportunity to say, so you could have stepped to the mic and said Wake Forest is channeling their inner Marcus Peters. We ain't done yet.
They are done yet. Not really. I don't know. I mean, if this series is at home, I might say they can flip the switch, but that seems like a really difficult place to play. Like on a really offensive yard, to me, really favors Vatek.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen the weather. For all I know, it's supposed to be bitter cold up there or something.
What you said, Kendall, is a good point, though. Like, I agree with both of your points. Like, I do think Wake Forest is getting ready to make a run. I watched Wheels, Joe, who you tipped me on to on YouTube. I watched the highlights of the Chase Burns start on Wheels last night, which it's awesome. It's 11 minutes. And Chase Burns was so good. It's bizarre that he gave up 4 home runs in that game. Well, it's not bizarre because that, like that's an extra small stadium. But the long story short is like Wake Forest, like you watch them run around and you're like, okay, like that looks like a good team. Like their personnel is eye popping. There just hasn't been, brilliant play yet. So I'm with you. I did take Virginia Tech, although this felt like a really tough series to pick. I think that one of the key guys is if I assume Brett Renfro, the freshman for Virginia Tech, is going to pitch against Josh Hartle, that's really important because I don't think Virginia Tech's beating Chase Burns, with no offense, Wyatt Parliament. By the way, I've just butchered my own rule too. We're just running right through the police tape right now. And so Brett Renfro is my player I want to emphasize. He's a true freshman. He's done really well on Friday nights for Virginia Tech, but this is a different kind of assignment than he's been asked for so far. So I picked Virginia Tech, but this was a challenging one. Christian Aro ratcheting it up on us. Joe, Bama at Kentucky.
So I went Kentucky here, correct, Runes? Question mark.
You did.
All right. I mean, because that's actually one I thought about quite a bit. It feels like kind of a prove it weekend for both teams, right? Alabama's been a little bit Jekyll and Hyde early season in the SEC campaign. But if you can get this road series win, I'm going to have a lot more confidence coming out of it. And on the flip side, we've looked at Kentucky's first 3 weekends in the SEC, and we're all kind of inclined to go, well, okay, it's Georgia, Missouri, and Ole Miss. Well, now you've got a team we think is a solid regional team. Like, go out and win that series and do it convincingly. And I think the masses will think a little bit differently about Kentucky. And my player here is Nick Lopez for Kentucky, a USC transfer, actually started his career at UIC. So he's did some time at a JUCO. Like he's his suitcases are well traveled, having a heck of a year. Like their offense, Kentucky's offense, they've had some injuries there. Grant Smith has missed some time. Ryan Waldschmidt missed some time. I think I'm missing some others, but he's been really the stalwart there. And I'm not sure exactly where they'd be if not for the type of season Nick Lopez has had so far. And also very good mustache, which can't be overlooked.
Joe, plug your Highway to Hoover podcast this week was awesome and Kentucky related. By the way, and that this gentleman who you're about to name gave us that the Kentucky team theme this year is "Let's Get Weird," which what's there not to love about that?
I've lived my life by that credo for a long time. But yes, this week on Highway to Hoover, I was joined by Kentucky baseball radio play-by-play man Darren Hedrick. A gentleman and a scholar who I've been on his podcast. So this was completing a home and home, if you will. So we're going to have to sign a fresh contract for the next one. But yeah, a lot of really good insight from him on how it is. If you're someone watching who doesn't really understand how it is that Kentucky's 8-1, listen to that. It'll give you some good insight into how they got to be where they are.
Love it. Fitzy, what say you about this series?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Joe said. I also picked Kentucky, and part of that is because, hey, I've been one of those people who's been saying, okay, like let's take a little bit of a grain of salt here with what they've done based on who they've played. But I actually do like their club. And I like some of their non-conference stuff too. I think quietly, the series win at the sweep at Upstate to open the year, and Kansas and Texas State, those wins, and they did Kennesaw State. I know they lost that series, and we kind of like maybe raised some eyebrows, but Kennesaw I think is pretty good. So anyway, I like their overall body work, but like mostly I just kind of like the cut of their jib. And I feel like they probably are one of those programs where they hear us. They see that we were late reacting, and that they're 8-1 in the SEC, and they're still only 17th in our rankings. They're still not a top 8 seed, or I think we have them as a host this week, but I think they probably recognize that like maybe they're not getting the respect that they feel like they ought to get. And it being at home this weekend, they showed me something actually going on the road and sweeping Ole Miss. I don't know, Ole Miss isn't great, clearly, but still going to Ole Miss and sweeping to me makes some noise. And so my player for you guys is Trey Pooser, the transfer from College of Charleston. Started out the year in the bullpen. He was very good in the rotation last year for Charleston, but started the year in the bullpen. He's pitched on Friday nights, I believe, the last 2 weeks, Joe, or Thursday nights, whatever the opening series day is. And he's been good. I mean, 5 2/3 last week, strong innings. He's a quality like 5th-year guy who's got good stuff. He can run the fastball into the mid 90s. It's some field to pitch. I just think he's a nice piece for them. That's going to be a real key going forward.
Interesting. Pooser is a guy he's been good for 4 years. He's 5th-year guy, but never missed bats. And when I see that, I'm like, oh man, he's going to get his ears beaten in the SEC, and it's fine, right? It's like he's done it. You're right. He's done a nice job.
Yep.
Gotta love it. Kendall, what say you?
Yeah, I tell you what, the thing I really like about UK is in a time of year where, we were just talking earlier on our chat about how, a team like Auburn still has TBA. You have teams moving rotations around left and right and moving lineups around left and right. The thing I like about UK is the fact that they know exactly who they are. They knew exactly who they were when I saw them in Round Rock, second weekend of the season. They're going to play really good defense. They're going to be an opportunistic offense. And the thing for me, the guy I really liked the weekend I saw him was Emilian Pitre. He can do it all. He can hit for a little bit of pop. He can hit for an average. He walks more than he strikes out. He has 16 stolen bases. He can do a little bit of everything. And when he gets rolling, the offense tends to follow suit. So I don't think Kentucky is one of those teams, for me, at least the weekend I saw them. They're not ultra flashy, man, but what they are is they've got experience, and there's not a guy in that lineup who's still wondering, like, okay, who am I as a player? They know exactly who they are, and I think there's value to that in college baseball.
Yep, well said. I picked Kentucky because they're the home team, because it felt like a pick 'em to me. Like both teams are a little mysterious to me. Like Alabama, I can't unsee them just getting their rear ends kicked at Georgia. Like that is a jarring result for me. And to your guys' point, Kentucky's has not played. They've not gone through the gauntlet they're about to go through, but you still, they've won all the games. The player of interest to me is Ben Hess. He is a guy that I thought was going to have a monster year for Alabama, and he just hasn't. Like before this year, when he has pitched, he's been injured, but when he's been healthy, he's been dominant in college baseball. And it's crazy that this year he's healthy. He's made 7 starts, and he's got a 5.59 ERA. What's crazier about that is the batting average against is still tiny. It's 210, and his strikeout rate is crazy. It's 38.1%, which is the highest of his career. And, he walks a few people, but it's not obscene, 12.7%. So I say all that Ben Hess could shove it right up the Roondogs keister this weekend by shoving on Kentucky. And then my Kentucky pick is screwed. But for right now, I'll go with the home hot team.
That's a good name too, Runes, because I'm with you. Like, I saw him in Frisco, and it was like, wow, this guy's like a top 15 pick. Like it was that kind of, it was elite fastball with life, riding life and velocity, and 2 like wipeout breaking balls. And I was like, wow. And I don't understand what's happened since then, why that has not continued to be dominant, because his stuff is really good.
Yep. That's how I would describe Joe Healy's just personal vibe. His riding life and velocity is really
that's right.
The best way to describe Joseph J. Healy. Joe, take us to your old homeland of the Big 12. Kansas State is going. Speaking of the Big 12, air quotes, Kansas State's going to UCF, the Knights.
Yeah, so I went UCF here. The hosting UCF Knights, by the way, in the most recent field of 64 projections.
Oh,
It's
hey
the
now.
hosting UCF Knights. Good luck to any people who cover that. Not a lot of press box room there at UCF, so good luck to everyone. Yeah, I just I kind of agonized over this one a little bit too, but I do kind of believe in this UCF team. It feels like a different vibe there. That's all very like vague stuff, but it does feel like there's a vibe there. This player to pick is Lex Boddicker for UCF. Had 16 home runs last year, only one this year. Has been in the lineup every day, so it's not like been in and out of the lineup, struggled to get at bats, that kind of deal. But a guy who has a lot more power potential than what he's shown. If he gets hot, UCF gets a lot more dangerous than it already is. And I joked about being a host, but I listened to the Nerdcast and I agreed with the logic. It's a muddled Big 12. UCF sitting there with an inflated RPI, which it's too early to really read into that, but you can kind of understand that if you're shoved up there in the top 10 right now and you keep winning, you're in a good position, right? So if we believe they keep winning, I think that's a realistic thing for UCF. Anyway, Boddicker gets going. They get to be a little more dangerous than they already are.
What was his first name, Joe?
Lex.
Nice. I mean, what's
Like
not to like
Luther.
about that?
Like Luther or Luger, depending on if you're a Superman or a wrestler.
Yes, or both. Well played. Fitzy, what say you about this series?
I'm riding with my ride or die with my K-State Wildcats preseason top 25 team. I believe in these guys. I'm going to give you two players, Runes, two. One of them is Kalen Culpepper because he's hot right now. Had a triple and home run the other night against Missouri State. I think he's about to go on a tear. And the other one is Jackson G. Wentworth. Call 877 outs now if you need help in your bullpen. He's been awesome for him all year long. Hat tip Joe Healy on that joke.
Oh, I like it. Well done.
That was I have to admit I was tipped off to that potential. Now I did come up with the 877 outs now part of that. However, the aforementioned Coach Farron did text me last week, the morning after our last preview podcast, and mentioned that I should have called Jackson Wentworth the structured settlement. That's his nickname. So he got the juices flowing on where the direction I could go there. So a partial hat tip to our buddy Coach Farron.
Love it. Kendall, what say you about this series?
I took UCF, and I'm going to actually play some 3D chess. I'm going to go with the entire Kansas State pitching staff. So here's the thing about Kansas State, guys, and this is the key to the series. Last week against Texas, their pitching staff was awful against the Longhorns. So Kansas State, fellas, they entered the weekend with the worst pitching staff ERA in the Big 12 in conference games. That's 11 conference games for the Batcats. They've also allowed 3 more home runs than the next worst team in the Big 12 conference. So the big key for Kansas State, they've got to pitch better. You got to be able to give the ball to your 2 big guys out of the bullpen with the actual lead before you can worry about winning the game. So I would say they're starting pitching.
Yeah.
Love it.
Which was their concern heading into the year. I mean,
no question.
So the Rune Dogs, the fabulous Rune Dogs, picked the Kansas State Wildcats, and Fitzy, you and me and Peebert were the only people that weren't afraid to compete and picked the Kansas State on the road Wildcats. I'm not going to talk about them. I'm going to talk about UCF. Like, I'm just fascinated by this team. I don't know hardly anything about them except for Rich Wallace is there. It felt like they had a lot of roster turnover. But as you look at it, I feel like a lot of surprise teams, the teams that kind of pop up, you look and they're playing like outrageous defense. And UCF is one of those teams, right? They're fielding 981. I know that's not the perfect stat for defense, but it does mean that they're collecting every single out. And then when you look at it, they've got Jack Ziska, Notre Dame transfer, playing right field, and Mikey Kluska, formerly of West Virginia, and I think he might have gone to Richmond also. Yeah, he went to West Virginia, then Richmond, then UCF, and he's playing shortstop. He's played 26 games. So anyway, kind of like cool little scrappiness in the portal there, and they've got an older team that's playing really good defense. So I picked Kansas State though, because I'm with you, Fitzy. Like we ranked them, and let's go down with the ship. Joseph, A&M at South Carolina, South Kakalaki. Let me put it out there. Only Pat-tastic James, and Stitchhead picked South Kakalaki. Everyone else picked the Aggies. So what say you about this, Joe?
Yeah, not one of those that picked South Carolina. But I meant to do this, Reens. I'm sorry. Real quick, the commenters I see out there, and by the way, we'll be here a little bit longer. So if you have questions, put them in the chat. We'll do our best to get around to them. We'll weave them in. We're not going to sideline the show to do it, but we'll weave them in. So shout out to Noah, Jeremy, Craig, Alec Box Warrior, and Brian Lee, who have already chipped in with some comments. No questions yet, but feel free to get those in. I picked A&M. I feel more confident than ever that it's Arkansas, A&M, and then everybody else in the SEC right now, which is kind of crazy because A&M's 6-3. It's not like they're 8-1 like Arkansas is, right? It's been a different deal, but just feel really good about what A&M has. Their top 3 hitters in their lineup are elite. Like they have as good a 1-2-3 as any team in the country. And the pitching has backslid a little bit in SEC play, but it's still a big improvement over where they were last year. So I like all of that. But my player of interest here is actually on the South Carolina side. And the biggest key for South Carolina is you've got to do something to slow down the A&M offense. You're not going to stop them, but you have to do something to slow them down. So I'm looking at Eli Jones, who's been a legit Friday guy for the last 3 weeks now in SEC play. Can you do it against an elite of the elite offense in A&M, though? They've yet to face one of those. That's a different deal. So I'm interested to see how he handles that. It feels important that he gives them not only a good start for the chances of winning game 1, but also so you don't burn through a ton of bullpen for the next 2 games where they're likely starting, Dylan Eskew, who doesn't really get deep into games, and then Tyler Pitzer, who's a freshman, who you're not sure what you're going to get there. So just important that he sets the tone at the beginning of the series.
Fitzy.
Yeah, my turn. I also have the Aggies. I love the way Joe put it, and I'll take it a step farther. My opinion is it's Arkansas and A&M, and then everyone else in the country, not just in the SEC. I think I'm with you there, Joe. I think A&M's right there. I just think their position player group is so elite, and their pitching is sufficient. Perfectly cromulent, if you will. My player of interest. I mean, how can you not be interested in what Braden Montgomery's doing right now? What a tear! How many games in a row is he homered now, Joe? Is it 4 or 5? It's a lot.
70 or 80 at least.
He
70
hit
or
2 in
80.
the game I was at last week.
Yeah, it's bonkers. I mean, he's an animal. And he's always been a really good player. Obviously, he's had impact tools. He was a freshman All-American, great player for 2 years at Stanford for Omaha teams, but he has really taken a leap to a different level. He's just a more mature hitter. He's a tougher out with elite power, with all fields power. It's just, great from both sides. He's awesome. And it's fun to see a super talented player take that next jump and just become a super duper star.
Kendall.
Yeah, I feel like South Carolina is one of those teams that I feel like, if you're A&M, you have to play I think you have to play a kind of an iffy series to lose a series to South Carolina. Like I think, for instance, they win the Vanderbilt series, but Vanderbilt, for all intents and purposes, was horrible that weekend. So I think as long as A&M plays at the level they played over the last few weeks, I think they win that series. And, the thing I like about their lineup is we talk so much about the Grahovics, the Lavalettes, and the Montgomerys for good reason. But the guy that I think is really sneaky good in their lineup is Jackson Appel, the Ivy League transfer there right after Montgomery in the lineup. It was a guy that, 17 walks, 10 strikeouts, can hit with a little bit of gap power, hitting 346. He's a sneaky, really good hitter in the middle of that lineup. And just when you think you can take a breath after those big 3 at the top, he tends to strike. So keep an eye on him this weekend.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a South Carolina player. I'm just very confused by them. Like that series lost to Ole Miss to start SEC play got a chance to get real ugly. Like Ole Miss is that, like they're starting to really struggle. But then, like you said, Kendall, they get that sweep of Vandy at home that is very confusing. And I'm going to say Ethan Petrie is the player of interest for me in South Carolina. I just find their team to be very fine. It's a nice team. And it's just it's older and it's fine. Like cromulent, Fitzy, but maybe less complimentary cromulent. Is there a word that's cromulent, but maybe I'm trying to do a backhanded.
Satisfactory.
They're very
Well,
satisfactory.
Yeah, and the other thing that I kind of wonder about too with South Carolina is what's the mindset of their fan base going the weekend. So you get a top 5 team at home, but you get absolutely just creamed on a Tuesday game against Georgia Southern. Are their fans going to show up and be rowdy? I mean, I legitimately think that's like something I'm have my eye on. Like, is it actually going to be a big time atmosphere? I'm kind of doubting it will be.
Because it can be. You're right, Kendall. That's
Yeah,
a good
no
point.
question.
That can be a really tough place to play when the fans are digging that team. So
I don't mean this as a joke. I mean, it's true. Like their women's basketball team is playing in the Final Four this weekend, and like that's a women's basketball town. So like that could be a factor. So
yeah, good point. All right, so for Oklahoma at Oklahoma State, everyone except for Peebert and Big Steve, owner of the Large Donkey, Steve Schock, picked Oklahoma State. So only 2 people picked OU. Everyone on this call picked the Cowboys, who are hosting Bedlam. Speaking of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, man, Oklahoma. I need therapy just to watch that team. Like they're fantastic. They're terrible. They're actually, that's all they are. They're fantastic or terrible. They actually don't have like if we could just get a second gear, that would be functional. Joe, what say you about this series?
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. You're right. It ruins like Oklahoma. Let's even go back to 2022 when they get to it, to the CWS finals. That team was not very good until April.
Yeah.
And they turned it on. And this just kind of is what Oklahoma seems to be. They do kind of go back and forth between giving us a lot of reason to believe and just looking not very good. So yeah, this was a question. Levi Moyers on YouTube says thoughts on the Bedlam series. So here you go, Levi. I went Oklahoma State. I think it's a surging team right now. Both teams have a lot to prove. Oklahoma State's coming on strong. Oklahoma obviously coming off of that Lamar sweep that just kind of is a head scratcher. I don't know. Lamar is good, but let's be real about this. That's a series that you can't lose, much less get swept. My player of interest here for Oklahoma State is Sam Garcia, a transfer from High Point, who I remember when Sam Garcia was a freshman. I'm going to give you my Sam Garcia bona fides here. When he was a freshman, I remember talking to some of the staff at High Point. They were like, hey, this is the guy. And at the time, they had a couple decent pitchers, and I was asking about them, and they said, hey, but the guy you really need to know is Sam Garcia. And he put up like a 1.94 that year at High Point. It didn't go quite as well his last couple of years at High Point, and you kind of thought, oh man, maybe he just didn't develop or what have you. He goes over to Oklahoma State, and boom, seems like kind of the best version of himself, right now. So him with another pitcher in the Oklahoma State rotation, I won't mention because someone else probably will, have given the Cowboys a really punch there and set them up for success with maybe a rotation a little bit stronger than what we've seen from Oklahoma State in recent years. That's kind of been a little bit of a sticking point for them the last several seasons.
Yeah, and
Fitzy, go for it. Yep.
And I was a little skeptical that rotation was going to pan out heading into the year, and it has. I will also save the other guy that you're alluding to, but he's been great. I think he was a midseason All-American for us, because I want to talk about Zach Earhart. Because I've been waiting for this guy for 3 years now. Love his tool set. I love the way he plays the game. He's been a very streaky player. He's had some injuries here and there. I think last summer on the Cape, he started out terrible, and then he really caught fire and dug his way out of this hole. He kind of a lackluster start to this year, but this past weekend, he got hot. They got him moving around. You would think you could look at this guy. He looks like a leadoff guy, right? It's like a, I don't know, 5'10", 5'11", like kind of compact, quick twitch athlete with a little bit of sneaky strength. But they had him, I think, in the 5 hole. He had a couple of hits. They had him leading off. He had 3 hits against West Virginia, 3 for 3. And then they put him in the 3 hole and he went 5 for 6. Maybe Zach Earhart is making the move that I've been waiting for. He's certainly shown flashes of it in his career, but I want him to make the move and make a run at being a real dude here. And I think maybe it's happening right now.
Love it. KR?
Yeah, I think the big thing with Oklahoma State is coming into the season, you guys just kind of alluded to it with their pitching, but, you look at the job that Brian Holiday, the junior college transfer, has done. And the thing that I like about this team is, I've been as critical of their pitching stuff over the last few years as anybody, right? But credit where it's due, and Rob Walton's done a tremendous job with the staff. I mean, this is a team that, pitching-wise did not look very good opening weekend against Sam Houston State, and you're thinking, oh, here we go again. Well, look at Oklahoma State, guys. They're ranked 5th in the country right now in staff ERA. They're ranked 9th in the country in strikeouts to walks. And so, A, they're getting guys out. B, they're throwing a lot of strikes. And so that's a really good combination. I think also when you look at this team from an offensive standpoint down the stretch, Nolan Schubert's finally healthy again. I know he's just hitting 255, but trust me, I'm buying stock in him having a really good second half as long as he's healthy. And, Aaron mentioned Earhart. So I like Oklahoma State actually to potentially win the Big 12 down the stretch. I think right now they might be playing the best baseball of anybody in this league.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. Carson Benj is the player for me. Like, he's having a nice year, almost 1,000 OPS, more walks and strikeouts, which is always great when that's your middle of the order bat, guys that's driving people in and taking walks. And they've finally found the right pitching role for him. He's the closer. It's been great, a bunch of punch outs, no walks. He's been excellent. And it just, you don't have to think about it that much. It's kind of like that old Mark Kotze, just come out of the outfield and throw hard and work in a couple sliders and let's call it a night. So I'm with you guys. So next is UNC at UVA. UVA's got a chance to win this first game, although man, they might want to kick a field goal here at the end just to secure it.
Henry Ford might just need to be the default answer for all of us.
Yeah, watch your lips, Drew Burris, by the way. Here comes Hank Ford. Look out.
Mills Bab in the comments says Henry Ford is that guy. You are correct, sir. 3 home runs tonight for the Model T man. 6 RBIs. I think he had the go-ahead home run.
Yeah.
In was it or was it a walk-off home run? I can't exactly remember. I didn't see exactly what happened, but anyway, he's been awesome. He's a real hitter, guys. And I said this first time I saw him in the fall. He jumped off the field. It's just like a super mature guy, right-handed power bat. With an approach, and it looks the part, man. You could just tell, like, this is the next dude. They always got a dude in their freshman class in Virginia who's a hitter, who's just going to be, sometimes multiple of them. And I still think that, Becker, the other freshman, got a chance to be pretty darn good too. But Henry just felt like he was a can't miss guy, and he has been.
By the way, 6'3", 210 pounds as a 19-year-old. Like, what is that? Like, what? How is that even humanly possible? By the way, our picks here is everybody except for Burke Granger picked Virginia. Pat James went against his North Carolina Tar Heels and picked Virginia.
No, he didn't.
I'm kidding. There's no way Pat would pick anyone but the Heels.
Especially after that video surfaced.
Yeah, that's right. Pat, the great Pat James and Burke Granger both picked North Carolina. The rest of us picked Virginia. What say you here, Joseph?
So yeah, I went Virginia. It feels like 2 kind of ACC teams in the same area of the pecking order, and those it just feels like those series tend to be really chaotic in the ACC. And here we go, game 1 is already extremely chaotic. Speaking of Pat James, he put in the chat here, our internal chat, Henry Ford is the first Virginia player to hit 3 homers in a game since Dan Street on February 22nd, 2002, and of course we all remember Dan Street. It says Ford was not born until 2 years later in Charlottesville. So how about that?
Well
so let me clean up a couple things here in the comments here. Aaron, you grabbed the thing from Mills Bab. Here's a really random question from Connor Johnson, Oregon State fan. Who will provide more high leverage clutchness down the stretch out of the new guys coming to the Pen mid-season? Leif Palmer, a freshman, he says 97 mile an hour fastball, or Kyle Scott, the Cal Poly transfer? The reason he asked about those 2 guys is Palmer threw for the first time in midweek against Gonzaga. Scott threw for the first time in like 6 weeks. There it is. Thank you for whoever put that on the screen. Scott threw for the first time in like 6 weeks in the midweek against Gonzaga. So guys who could be potential depth pieces. I'm not going to pretend like I know a ton about these guys. Maybe Runes, a little more, but give me the old guy, freshman, first time through the Pac-12. Oregon State's obviously going to be good enough to be in a lot of high pressure games down the stretch. I'll take the veteran guy in that situation, but Runes, I'll let you jump in if you have any sort of more.
Yeah, I mean, Leif Palmer's like a monstrous hard throwing freshman. Those are hard to get to campus. And he was, he just hasn't thrown much. He was a little banged up, but it's weird. Like Kyle Scott is not like your crafty veteran per se from Cal Poly. Like he's a 5th year guy, but if you look at his strikeout rates, Kyle Scott's strikeout rates are, well over 24% most years, with 20 being the average. So I'm with you. Like, take the old guy, but I do think Leif Palmer, they could use a little bit more velocity in that bullpen, and he certainly provides that.
So back on topic with UNC Virginia, I'm actually going to go with Jacob Ferentz as a player to watch in this series. So he's a transfer from a school called Salisbury, which is my least favorite kind of steak, frankly. But he's sitting there with I'm trying to do quick math, which is dangerous. Like, he's got an OPS over 1,400 so far this season. Now, he's been in a little bit of a timeshare situation. He hasn't started as many games as some others, but like, the numbers are extremely eye-popping, and just, it feels like another out of nowhere, really good, advanced scout thing and recruiting in the transfer portal to find a guy like that. And it's the rich get richer with a Virginia lineup that already obviously had a lot of dangerous bats.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Real quick, circling back on the Henry Ford thing, you mentioned he was born in Charlottesville. Spent some time talking with his dad this past weekend at Duke, and he just talked about how they grew up right down the street from the ballpark, and they had season tickets at the Dish, and Henry got to watch all those glory years UVA teams, and it's neat to see him now kind of living that dream as a freshman and raking in the heart of the UVA order. But this series I was shocked to see how one-sided the picks were, because I think it's almost a coin toss. I mean, tonight's game was almost a coin toss, 14-11. Another ACC classic. God, I'm tired of these garbage high-scoring games. But there's a lot of
old man talking to clouds.
There's a lot of offensive firepower in this series, for sure.
Yes.
These teams can both score a lot of runs, and they both Virginia needs to, I think, still kind of find some answers on the mound. Colin McKay did not have a good start today. Evan Blanco was pretty good last week for him, so I guess that's going to be my player. The lefty. Brian O'Connor talked about he wants to see Blanco kind of take that next step. He was good as a bullpen guy last year. He's been able to kind of keep his team in games, give him, 4+ innings. He's not been able to kind of get through and get you that 5, 6, 7 innings, certainly. But if you can at least give him like 5 or 6 consistently, I think that'd be a big boost for this staff. So, it's not power stuff, but it's pitchability, 3-pitch guy, good changeup, left-handed, and I think he's going to have to be a key piece for him. There's no question about it. And he has been good, but I think they need him now as a sophomore to take that next step as we head down the stretch.
Love it. KR.
Yeah, I'll just go with Ethan Anderson. He was a guy that had a really good year for them last year, 15 homers, 66 RBIs. He's had a really quiet year offensively, but tonight gets a hit and a couple RBIs. So, we talked about, Wake Forest and guys that we felt like the second half of the season had really started to get going a little bit. Maybe he's one of those guys for UVA. Not that they needed more offense tonight, but maybe he's one of those guys for UVA, the second half of the season that just makes them a little bit more of a complete team.
Yeah, I like both of these teams long term. I mean, they feel like, but they both have concerns. Like the Virginia's given up a lot of runs, and this is interesting. Vance Honeycutt was 1 for 13 over the weekend against Wake Forest with 7 punch outs. Tonight he's 0 for 5 with 3 punch outs. So but his defense shows up every night, and I know he's got a heater in him, which will be really interesting. So I'm very bullish on both teams. Virginia's home, so that becomes a default. I just want to say Griff O'Farrell is like that X factor for Virginia, right? Where it's just like he helps them win regardless of what he does. He's such a winning player, which I know is a corny cliche, but he's awesome. It's
like he's more toolsy than these two guys, but it's like having a Benny Orloff or a Nolan Fontana. Mm-hmm. I think Griff has a better pro career ahead of him. I think he's a big leaguer. I think he's a big league shortstop, which is something that, Brian O'Connor even said, like, you just don't see a lot of American-born players sticking at shortstop, coming through the college ranks these days. But this guy is boy, is it special, guys. I don't know how much you saw that Duke series, but seeing him sliding up the middle, making these no-look glove flips to second for the fourth, just how easy he makes everything. I mean, he is something special. We'll miss watching that guy.
Next series is the Battle of the Bulldogs. Georgia is going to Mississippi State. They're going to Stark Vegas. Everyone picked Hail State with the exception of Peebert, Shotgun, Pat the Stat James, and Stitchhead. So Peebert, Shoddy, Pat the Stat, and Stitch all picked Georgia. The rest of us picked Hail State. Joe, talk to me.
Yeah. So I went with Mississippi State. Now I'll tease the audience there, Runes. I'm going to throw something to you when we come back around to you because I know you've got thoughts here. John Smith, and I presume it's a different John Smith than the one that knew Pocahontas, says on YouTube, what do y'all got on the Big Ten this year, and what happened to Iowa? I think we all have opinions on that, Runes, but I know you're a Big Ten observer and have been a little dismayed with the state of affairs there in that league this season. So we'll let that get back around to you there. And then the other thing, I wanted to mention this too, because this will be a little plug for the site. Noah on YouTube says, congrats on launching the predictive picks on the site. Happy to see y'all's in the sports growth these past few years. Thank you, Noah. We appreciate those kind words. Now back to your regularly scheduled programming. I went with Mississippi State. The key this weekend for State, you got to keep Georgia in the ballpark. I mean, there are 84 home runs on the season. And yeah, sure, Condon's 19 of those. But if you take those 19 home runs away, that's still
Who was that, Joe? What was that guy's name?
Charlie Condon. I think the gentleman's got a little bit of a future.
Heard of
him.
Know,
it's like a hipster
Who is
kind
he?
of thing. You just got to know about him.
He's a hipster player.
Yeah, you just got to know about him. But you take away his 19 home runs, and that still gives him 65 home runs, which is more than most of the rest of the country still. So it's not just Charlie Condon. State's got to keep him in the ballpark. That's the key. I'm looking at Cal Steven as a key player for Mississippi State. Their pitching is still a little bit shallow. Nate Dome not back yet. They're cautiously optimistic they'll get him back at some point. Drangelo Sanger has been really good. That's the second player, but I only say that to say he's been the steadier of the two guys. Cal Steven has been a little more up and down. They need Steven to be more consistent, especially as long as they don't have Nate Dome in the rotation. They need those two guys to be really good. Steven's just been a little more inconsistent of the two.
Fitzy, by the way, the big takeaway from Joe's bit right there was that Charlie Condon, Chuck Condon, if you will, is the hipster pick for Player of the Year.
That's right. Nobody knows about him. Best kept secret.
Fitzy.
I bet Charlie Condon wears plaid with pearl snaps.
I don't
He's looking at a brownstone in Bed-Stuy right now, as a matter of fact.
So many words, I don't know what they mean. Yeah. Fitzy, save us.
He also enjoys micro brews while he gets his hair cut. I think that's one of the things that we learned last week on the show.
Yes.
Guys, I also picked Mississippi State. I kind of felt like they just needed to weather those first 3 weeks of conference and get to this week at 4-5 was my target for them. That's exactly where they are. They have to win this series, and then they've got at Ole Miss and versus Auburn, but like you got to take care of, your home field opportunities. Georgia, I mean, we'll see. Like this feels like we're starting to get to a point where it's like you have to take Georgia seriously as certainly as postseason contender where they are on the RPI. And they had that one series sweep, against Bama, but now they're on the road and we're starting to find out what exactly they're made of. But I just really like this Mississippi State team. I know that they've had some hiccups, even the midweeks too, here and there, but like, I like the cut of their jibs. I'm going to run that line back out at you. Carson Ligon is my player. I thought coming out of the bullpen against LSU, one of those games a couple weeks ago, they kind of just threw him in there in mop up duty. And I was like, wow, like this was a guy, like this was a famous dude who came in here and you thought would probably be a big piece of the staff. And they're bringing him in down like 9 runs or something. And he wound up kind of stabilizing the game and showed me good stuff. And I was like, hey, like, maybe he's ready to take a step forward. I know they started him Sunday against Florida, pitched into the third, maybe not the best control. I'm wondering what his role is going to look like going forward, especially once Dome comes back. I mean, if he can kind of emerge into a guy that they can extend some more and maybe trust as a starter, then maybe you could even use Dome in the bullpen. And I think that wouldn't be the worst thing for Mississippi State. So I just think Ligon is a guy that, I don't know where he fits, if he fits as a starter, if he fits as a bullpen, but I feel like for them to really get where they want to get, he's got to be a key piece.
Love it. K Rizzle.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Mississippi State has had a chance to win a couple of really big series this year. I mean, Florida, they don't throw a ball right in the middle of the Cags. They probably win that series. A&M, they had a chance to win that series. I'm with Aaron. I really like this team. I think they know their offensive identity. I think they're balanced. I'm not saying the bottom of the lineup's amazing, but I think it's solid. Kind of starting with Connor Hyzak there in the middle of that order. But the guy for me, when I look at Mississippi State, they can just kind of that I feel like when he rolls, they roll, is Hunter Hines. When you look at the win they had at A&M, what happened? Hunter Hines had a big hit. If you look at the LSU series, one of the games they won there, Hunter Hines had a big hit, had a big home run. So, I just think he's one of those guys that, we all know about Dakota Jordan, but, when he's right, he's a really, really good hitter and a really good power hitter. So Hunter Hines is a guy I have circled this weekend. And it does, by the way, sound like Nate Dome is going to pitch in some sort of role this weekend, which obviously would be very, very beneficial for Justin Parker's staff.
Love it. I love both teams are swaggier than they were last year, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
Georgia just getting absolutely mauled by Kentucky that one weekend. I'm just going to choose to unsee that weekend, but I can't, right? Like other than that, I've kind of liked what Georgia's done. I love going to the NCAA stats page on individual teams and look for outliers. Georgia's got some funny outliers. They're 282nd in the country in hitting batters, so they're not pitching in. They're 270th in the country in sack bunts because they hit 1 million home runs. They're 272nd in stolen bases. So, because why would you if you're hitting all those home runs? And they're 205th in triples. So if they get it airborne, it's basically a home run. So good on you, Georgia, for being interesting. The player I'm gonna name is Nolan Stevens from Mississippi State. He's a freshman. He's a two-way player. He's been a really important arm for them out of the pen, and just not Cal Steven like Joe said, but Nolan Stevens. And left-handed arm, seems really talented. He was highly touted. And they seem to be really beyond to something there. He's walked 4 dudes. He's been a good strike thrower. So, this is a cool series. Something to prove here. UCSB at Irvine, Joe. Oh, well, the Big Ten. I talked to the Grand Canyon people, and I asked Greg Wallace, who's the best team you've played so far, or, the team that really stood out to you. He said, without hesitation, Nebraska. Just love the way they played, their competitiveness, their skill level. He said their catcher, Josh Caron, really stood out. He's super physical. He's their 4-hole hitter. He said, there's no like star players. There's like no Charlie Condon clearly, but he said everybody's competent. I just feel like Rob Childress is really making an impact there. And, Iowa, we've all walked away from, but they're sneaking, like they're at large. They have big time at large problems. You guys talked about that on the Nerdcast. I think Iowa is going to finish in the top 4 in the Big Ten, but I don't know if it's going to be enough. And so,
No, it won't be.
Yeah. So it's like you said on the Nerdcast, Kendall, like they're going to have to pretty much win the automatic.
Can I give you a comp for Nebraska? Nebraska reminds me a lot of Kentucky. It's a good position player group. There's not superstars, but you look at like Josh Overbeek. It's a nice player. You mentioned Carey. They've got a really nice lineup. They, again, they're pitching like Kentucky isn't overwhelming. They're not going to have a lot of guys out there throwing 97 past you, but what it is it's a collection of experience, good arms. So they actually remind me a lot of Kentucky. Iowa, you mentioned, by the way, ranked 164th in the country in ERA. And 134th in the country in strikeout to walk ratio with Brody Breck, Marcus Morton, and Kate Obermiller.
It's not
good.
It's not. Those are not awesome stats. Joe, what say you about UCSB against the Eaters of Irvine?
Yeah, fun series here. Feels important for UCSB. Just given that they feel a little more tenuous than UC Irvine. I think we have a little more confidence in UC Irvine. And just in the winning is a skill department. Runes, you can correct me when we get around to you. If, I know you've mentioned UCSB might actually be the more talented team of the two, but UCI seems to have this whole winning thing down, which I'm told is important. When I look at the player side, I just honestly can't believe Nick Pinto is still around. Shout out to that guy.
Amazing.
Just still
getting his PhD,
done.
Man.
He's like that guy at the old man game at the pickup games, that the pickup basketball games that just does a lot of like setting screens and like baby hooks, and like he's got that old man pitching game. I don't know what, his stuff is probably better, but he's just been around, just gets the job done, kind of flies under the radar, but obviously has been super good for them this year as well.
He's got 53 career starts. He's about to make his 54th career start. And you're right, Joe. He pitches like an old man. He has this big ripper breaking ball that's like in the mid 70s that he's just throwing over and over again. And it's covering so much ground that it's like 5 different pitches. And he's got a wicked mustache. And yes, excellent. All of that.
A lot going for him.
Yeah. Fitzy, former Orange County native.
Yeah.
Talk to us.
Yeah, and I really like this Irvine team a lot. I'm just going to pick the Gauchos here because I think this is a little bit of a do or die series for their at-large hopes. We ranked them in the preseason. Still like their talent. Still think this program does know how to win. They've done plenty of winning, Joe. They could win. They still have I mean, I still look at their personnel, especially in the mound, and I'm like, they've shuffled the roles a little bit. You got Gallagher now at the top of the rotation, Mike Gutierrez, another just veteran, just out-getter. The preseason All-American Matt Ager now, after kind of struggling in a starting role this year, very surprisingly, they brought him out of the bullpen this past week, Runes, and I don't know if that's the plan going forward or if that was because the forecast looked bad for the next day, because I think that series got the finale got rained out. Do I have that right? I don't know. But anyway, he was good out of the bullpen for him, 3 in the third and 6 strikeouts. And I wonder if that's going to be the way it is now. I mean, you still have Tyler Bremner back there. I'm giving you too many names. I'm trampling the rules again, but I just,
Rebel.
You, Rune, sold me heading into the year on the quality of the core of their pitching staff. And I remain convicted in that group. I don't know about the depth of it beyond the core, but I really like the core. Still believe in them.
Love it. K. Rizzle?
Hey, all UC Irvine does is win, 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 no matter what. I think when you look at the Anteaters, the thing I like about them, guys, is, we talked early in the year, right, about how Hawaii is a really difficult place to go play. Not for UCI. They scored 30 runs in 3 games against Hawaii, which, by the way, Rich Hill's done a great job with that team. They're having a really nice year. And so I like UC Irvine this series, and I really like what Caden Kendall has done, for the Anteaters so far this year. Last year hit 333, this year hitting 452, 1.217 OPS, can hit for some gap power, walks as much as he strikes out, just having a really nice year. He's kind of the table setter for the Eaters. I just like the consistency of this team. They seem, for me, like the clear-cut number 2 team on the West Coast. Like, I don't think it's even close.
Yep. I just think if you really do your background information, boys, by the way, Fitzy is the only person in the company that picked the Gauchos.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's actually kind of surprising because, UCSB, I think, is a good team.
Yeah.
And this is a home series.
I think UCSB's got Omaha pitching and a position player group that I think is like a more of a regional group, or like it's fine. I think Irvine has got an Omaha position player group, but I'm concerned about the depth of their pitching. Oh, go ahead, Fitzy.
I was just going to correct Kendall. It's actually a road series for both teams because they're both playing at USC's home park this week in Irvine.
No. I was trying to follow you and I got lost in that joke, but that was excellent. That was well played, Fitzy. Yes, nice of USC to allow Irvine to play.
This should make me laugh that hard. Sorry, Stinky.
Well done. Man. Oh, love that. Oh, beautiful. Stay caliente, left coast. Joe, I just like the mentality of Irvine, right? Like, eaters got to eat, and I like there's a good vibe from that team. #together we zot. But like Santa Barbara, I like where their head's at. #Chomaha. And I like the fact that they're not Argentinian Cowboys; they're Argentine Cowboys. So there's a lot of backstory in this series. Ultimately,
you're really getting in the weeds on this matchup.
Oh man, yes, I've ever since I had the Gauchos in the 2016 Super Regional. It's that stuff's burned into my skull. But I like like you guys said, I like both teams. I'm just going to take the Eaters because they're at home, and let's go Thomas McCaffrey, 4-year starting catcher who hit 4-hole as a true freshman. Love that. So last series, Joseph, Miami at Duke.
So I went. Okay, good. I'm not muted. I faked myself out on that one.
Everyone picked Duke. Everyone picked Duke. Disrespecting Miami social media. They're stretching right now. They're buying ammunition. They're like at an arms store right now.
I've already gotten a text from someone who runs a certain social media account down in Coral Gables. They're fired up. Let me just tell you, we made their day.
Yeah, it's so great. Why'd you do it, Joe? Speak for us.
Now batting for the Hurricanes, the third baseman, Harold Martinez. Martinez. Until he said he runs a social media account, I wondered if it was J. Rokeach that had texted Aaron Fitt. By the way, I have compiled a document now of Miami Hurricanes from like roughly 2001 to 2015, just so that when this comes back around, I'll always have a name ready for you.
Love that.
So strap in, boys. It's going to be quite a ride. So Wint Duke, however, I am fascinated. I'm going to admit I just picked this player on the fly. I had a different player in mind, but instead I'm going to go with Miami reliever Nick Robert, because this Joker has thrown 16 times already.
Whoa.
Which seems like a lot. Like he's on pace for 35 appearances. And he's been pretty doggone good. So that's the direction I'm going, because nobody else on their staff. Well, they've got a couple guys that have thrown a decent bit, but yeah, 16 just seems like an awful lot. So it must be a rubber arm reliever. So let's go with that guy.
Love it. Fitzy?
Yeah, I picked Duke. I think Duke right now, if I have to pick a team that I think is the best team in the ACC, when it's all said and done, I still believe it's Duke. I just think they have the best pitching. And part of that, guys, and I'm going to give you a boring name, but because I didn't get to talk about this in the show earlier this week, Chuck W. Bielenson is back, baby. He had 2 rough outings, but he kind of went back to basics against Virginia when he finally came in and got a save there, a 2-inning save. And he went back to the bread and butter. You know, it's like, hey, I'm Kevin Kopps. I got to throw my cutter. You're Chuck Bielenson. You got to throw that changeup, baby. He threw it 13 out of his last 15 pitches to righties and lefties. Nobody could sniff it, just disappearing. It's an elite pitch. He's got a good 4-pitch mix. And so I think maybe they got a little too mix happy with him, but that pitch is just a weapon. And that's what I like to see, is Chuck just enforcing his will with the change piece. He's back, and that's a big difference maker for Duke.
Love it. K. Rizzle.
Yeah, I just want to start off my analysis by saying my apologies to Ben Miller. When we were doing our midseason All-America teams, it's kind of crazy. We pick obviously Charlie Condon, and some other pieces like that. But like when you look at, Gage Miller was on our second team. Ben Miller didn't make the list. And when you look at what he's done this year, just offensively, it's pretty striking. 458, 9 homers, 32 RBIs. He's having a great year. So that's my guy to watch this weekend.
He's got a great mustache too, Raleigh Fingers style.
Love it. I'm going to go. I like. We all picked Duke. We have established that. I think Duke is this. Me not picking Miami. I actually like their team. This is more about how much I like Duke. The player I'm going to pick is Gage Zeal. Like he's always had a big rep, and apparently I think it was last week where he carved up Clemson. And if I'm not mistaken, that he's had I know recently had a really big start, and so that changes thing. Like if Miami's got that type of dude on a Friday night and change the complexion of the whole series type of deal. But I still think Duke. I just think Duke is awesome, and they've played a really tough schedule minus some midweek games. Like Duke is as tested as anybody. I want to give you guys a couple more stats on Irvine, because we don't always get chances to talk about the West Coast teams. How about this for Irvine as a team? I shorted them. They are 16th in the country out of 300 in earn run average. Irvine is 3rd in the country in hit by pitch, which is a stat that's very important to me, which leads them to be 8th in the country in on base percentage. And they're like 20th in fielding percentage. So again, I wish they had more depth on the mound, but they are pitching very competently. They are hard to score on.
That's a great, like old school Irvine style team. I love that. And Runes, before you wrap it up, I got to give you one more name.
Mm-hmm.
And that name is Jack Coombs, because I made fun of Jack a little bit last week on the show. Because historically Jack has not been much of a factor in college baseball. You go into Jack Coombs Field at Duke, there's not really historically not much of a home field advantage as far as atmosphere is concerned. But let me just tell you guys, hey, hats off to you, Jack. Great atmosphere, 3 days in a row at Duke for that Virginia series. And, it apparently was just kind of an organic thing. Like, hey, like we're back on campus now after playing in this cavernous AAA park for the last however many years. It's hard to get atmosphere over there. That's for darn sure. I always thought going back to campus was the right move. But like, I was kind of blown away by how good it was there for 3 days. And it was, it was Duke fans too. It wasn't like there's been times in the past where they've had big crowds and it's like, oh, NC State fans just crowding in there. This was like actual Duke baseball fans showing up. And I just think that's a neat testament to the success that the program that Chris Pollard has built, and it's just kind of organically starting to grow. And once they break ground this summer on the new facility, I think that's pretty exciting to think where that program could be from a game day standpoint, and a few years down the road.
That's good that you share that, Fitzy, because I still haven't forgiven Jack Coombs for, just violently taking out 14-year-old Steven Schock in the dugout, just cheap shotting my man while he's trying to get a college scholarship. So, that is something I can't unsee from Jack Coombs, but I'm glad that you said that.
According to Wikipedia, Jack Coombs' nickname was Colby Jack because he attended Colby College, graduated in 1906.
Wow. How
Jack
about
Coombs. Yeah. So shout out to Colby Jack. One of my favorite cheeses.
Was that, so that was not, it had nothing to do with the cheese. It had everything to do with the college.
Colby College in Maine. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
big rival to Bates, Matt Myers' alma mater.
How about that?
We're off the rails now, guys.
Very good. Boys, well done. Happy Thursday evening, everyone. Enjoy weekend 8, which has already happened. It's already started. And that is it. We will catch you next time on the D1 Baseball Podcast.